Hi, Gary here. You know, Margaret Mitchell wrote the book Gone with the Wind back in 1936. And one of her quotes was, "Death, taxes, and childbirth. There's never any convenient time for any of them." You know, and so we want to talk about, death at this point and, in effect, wealth transfer. So we'll be a little not so morbid here. So, we've all heard all the horror stories out there, about people having died and then the family being ripped apart by the money and lawsuits and long, horrendous probate processes with lots of fees and charges going out, on and on and on. And none of us want this. This is a horrible situation. But even having said that, there are many, many people who still don't have their estate plan. And it's very important to understand, for instance, in the state of Illinois, if you don't have a will when you die, it's called dying intestate, and you have a spouse and children as an example, what the laws of the state say, this state say, basically is 50% goes to your spouse and 50% to your children. Now, that may not necessarily be what you want. So obviously it's important to be very specific and intentional about what's going to happen in your estate plan. So there's 3 P's I want to talk about today. It's people, property, and process. And first I want to talk about the process. It's an estate planning process where you really sit down and think through those things that are most important to you about your heirs, your loved ones, and how this estate is going to go there. Really getting an overall plan and process for getting through all of that. And then it really involves these other areas, which are people. So who are the people involved? Who's going to be the executor or the trustees or the beneficiaries or the powers of the agents for your powers of attorney, for health care and property? There are people involved in this whole process as we pass out of this life and then others take over our assets as we move along. And then there's the property. What kind? Well, you own it individually or jointly, or you have it in trust, or it's in an IRA or qualified retirement plan, or it's an insurance policy or an annuity. And every one of these guys has a different way of how that property will pass pursuant to that ownership. So it's very clear to understand how we want this to be owned. Now, what we find happens out there is people put plans in place. They have wills and trusts and everything else, but they've never funded them. Extremely important to fund them. What do I mean by that? It means actually putting them in the name of the trust, or making sure the beneficiaries are designated properly so that they walk through appropriately, so everything goes the way you really intentionally want it to go and pass. Very, very important. And so in that whole process, we really have to deal with also estate taxes and inheritance taxes. So right now, federal estate taxes, the exemption is $5.34 million for each person. Now that's $10.7 million for a couple. So it might be not a problem for you. And there's a portability item now, and it wasn't there in the past in the last couple of years. So basically, if you have under $10.7 million, no federal tax. However, in the state of Illinois, there's an inheritance tax, and that one is at $4 million each. So that's only $8 million total, and there's no portability, which basically means you have to make sure assets are really named appropriately so that you use these two $4 million exemptions up. Now, this may sound like a very complex and confusing area, and it is. So therefore, you really need to take a look at hiring an estate planning attorney, a professional who can help you go through this process, people, and property and funding of all this to make certain that it goes exactly and intentionally the way you want it to go. You can also call our office and we can help you out if you don't have an estate planning attorney or you need help in thinking through this. We'd love to be able to help you with that. And on that note, we have a seminar coming up. This wealth transfer is the third highest concern for successful families. Only wealth preservation, keeping what you got, and tax mitigation, wealth enhancement, are above it. So in this particular seminar, it's going to be Taking Charge of Your Wealth. It's on June 10th and June 16th. You can go to our event page and look at that. We'd love to have you there so you can learn more about the whole wealth area, this being one piece of that. Also, if you wouldn't mind contacting us, we have a tech night coming up in October. We've had it for in the last year. Any topics you'd like to learn more about, we want to know about as we set that up for the future. Had a great turnout last year. People loved the stuff we covered, but we want to know what you would like to have covered coming to the event. So until next time, enjoy.